Well, good day to you. It is October the 5th, and I hope you're having a great day wherever you are. My name is Gary Willing, and as always, I want to welcome you to Search for Signs. If you have heard a video or two in the past, welcome back. Now, if you have heard a video before, you've heard me talk about this, but if you're totally new, you might want to know more about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom, okay? So at the beginning of every video, I always take a moment and kind of talk about this for those people who don't know it. So if you already know this information and you've done your own research, just skip through it and go to the video. But if you are new and you want to know more, the best thing to do is to do your own research, okay? And I've provided links in the description portion of every one of these videos that take you to websites that talk about this information to hopefully help you with that. Look to the right, look down below, however it's showing up on your video feed, and you'll see a bunch of links. The one at the very top is the Share International site. That is the best site to get the best background information. If you don't necessarily want to read a lot about it, but you want to watch another video, there is a video of Benjamin Creme, and you might not know who Benjamin Creme was, but Benjamin Creme is the person who initially brought the information about Maitreya to the public. And this video is an hour long, and it's organized very well, and you kind of can hear it from Benjamin Creme, even though he's passed away, you can hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I don't know anybody that can explain this information, explain the priorities of Maitreya better than he can. So hopefully you'll take advantage of it and you'll look into it because they're free. Okay. Now you want to come back and join the discussion, post a comment, let me know what you think. People do that all the time. Or if you have a question or two you want to ask me, post your question in the comment section, or you can email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. All right. So let's get on into it. So somebody asked me a question. Tell me the name of the guy, middle left, in the white. So he's, I think, talking about Maitreya, which is the middle left, yeah. Now, that is not how Maitreya necessarily looks. That's just how he appeared to some fundamentalist Christians in Nairobi, Kenya, in, I think it was June of 1988, so a while ago. And this photograph was taken from a member of the press who just happened to be at that prayer gathering at that time. Maitreya appeared out of the blue, dressed in the way that these Christians viewed Jesus. So that's how they view Jesus, wearing this white with this blue. I don't know the sect of Christianity that Maria Katsa was a part of, but that's how they thought that he would come back. They were all wearing blue and white. Maitreya came back as Jesus, dressed in blue and white. Spoke for about 15 to 20 minutes, according to Benjamin Creme's master. And this is quite extraordinary, too, in perfect unaccented Swahili, okay? And then disappeared the same way that he appeared. And then since then, up until the point of the United States invasion into Iraq, he appeared almost weekly at different prayer gatherings in churches and mosques and synagogues all over the world, and spoke to them as their awaited teacher in almost the exact same way. Appeared out of the blue, spoke to them in whatever language they spoke, and then disappeared. And then Benjamin Creme was always privy to this information, but he asked his master what the reaction of the crowd was. Some of the times it was positive. Most of the time it was very positive and uplifting. Other times it was mixed. Maybe some people were scared, some people weren't. Other people might have saw him as the Antichrist, and yet he's not, but saw him as the Antichrist and were very fearful. And so he would have all these different reactions from these two people. Now, you might be wondering why you haven't heard anything about this, because this was the only time that it was ever really published in the news that Maitreya spoke to a religious group like this. But And it's a good question because I don't know. Now, other than the fact that the people who were there at that time or whatever it was did not want to go to the public with this information. They wanted to keep it private. But here's the thing. I know someone in Dallas, Texas, because Maitreya appeared to I think it was an evangelical group somewhere in and around Dallas. And they put an ad out. Benjamin Creme eventually told him not to do this, but they put an ad in the paper asking if anybody had been at a gathering where something like this had happened. And a woman responded back and said that she was at one of these gatherings and was told by the leaders of the church not to say anything to the public. And she didn't agree with it. She wanted it to be known to other people. But she was there and she confirmed what Benjamin Creme said. So it was quite extraordinary. But anyway, that's who that was. But if you're looking for Maitreya to look like that, wearing that type of headdress on TV, you're not going to find him because he doesn't wear that. I'm sure when he's speaking to the media, he's wearing, very modern Western clothes, like a business suit or something like that. And then if he was speaking to perhaps people in the Middle East, he might be wearing that kind of garb or those kind of clothes or something like that. So hopefully that helps, but thank you very much for that question. All right, here's a comment coming from Claudia Helmer. I have not seen Maitreya, but I have spoken with him for about an hour. Okay. It was more of a mental overshadowing from the soul level than a literal conversation because Benjamin Creme could tell me anything. So I wanted to see for myself, and I did, and it obviously worked. Furthermore, in my opinion, my reading of Alice Bailey, and especially The Secret Doctrine, is greatly underestimated and highly recommend it to everyone. Now, The Secret Doctrine, I know you know this, Claudia, but others might not. The Secret Doctrine was actually written by a woman named Helena Blavatsky. Okay, so the way it kind of reads, it almost makes it sound like Alice Bailey wrote that. But the Alice Bailey writings are very good. The Secret Doctrine, I think, might be a little hard for people to read who are just getting into this information. And I would recommend Benjamin Creme's books over those two because the information in there is more up to date, and I think it's easier to read just from the layman, such as myself. I've read Alice Bailey, I've read The Secret Doctrine, and I've read Benjamin Creme's books, and I always recommend Benjamin Creme's books, not because I knew him and he was a friend of mine, but because his books read much better and are much easier to understand. And some of the esoteric principles that he teaches in those books, he brings it down to a level and kind of breaks it down into a way that it's very easy to understand. The Alice Bailey books are a tad bit more complicated. They're more like, I would say, college engineering or textbooks or something like that, but about esoteric principles. But both, all three are really good. I mean, it just depends on what interests you and what you can handle. I didn't really find The Secret Doctrine to be something that I would want to keep reading and quoting and all that kind of stuff. That's just me. But you might be different. But thank you very much for your suggestions on those. Okay. All right. Timothy Tilton, can you create a video or something in an attempt to get people clamoring to hear Maitreya speak? I don't know. I'm not really that technical with videos. And I don't think I have the magnetic personality to get a video to go viral. Even if the information is wonderful, it's like most information about spiritual or prophecies or anything about the future, the ones that really do well are the ones that incite fear. You know what I mean? And I don't do that. I mean, I know that's not what you're saying. I don't have, like I said, I don't know how to do those kind of things, like to put up a TikTok video. I've done some short videos of Benjamin Creme's masters, some of the things that he had in his articles, or let's say Maitreya's messages or something like that. And the response has been positive. It's not gone viral. I don't think this information is ready to go viral yet. And it really kind of keys into why people haven't seen Maitreya and recognized him on TV, even though he's really in plain sight. And it really boils down to, I don't think people are there yet. And what do I mean by that? Well, when Maitreya has been interviewed on TV or for the media in the United States and Europe and around the world, okay, he's being interviewed by a member of the press. Now, your opinion of the media might be that the media is very corrupt and corporate driven, and that's true, right? And there's a lot of truth to that. And that's the problem that we have. One of the problems that we have today is that media is not representative of the people as well as it should be. Now, it's kind of idealistic to think that it would be perfect and untouched by commercialization. But the fact of the matter is that it is. But they are representatives of humanity from the eyes of Maitreya and these masters. They represent humanity because that's how we communicate with one another, is through our media, whether it's independent media on YouTube or the mainstream media that we're used to and we've been used to for decades, right? But there are representatives. So when they don't ask a question that incites people to think that that might be Maitreya, Maitreya is not going to volunteer that on his own. He can't. And you might not understand why, or if you're listening to this, why wouldn't he be able to? Well, the masters work within the law, all these laws, the law of cause and effect. They work perfectly within that. They don't harm anybody. But they also work within this law that is very unfamiliar to people. It's called the law of free will. They never violate people's free will. And it might seem strange and foreign and rather frustrating at times, the way that these masters, especially Maitreya, since he's the one that's out in the everyday world right now, it might frustrate people, and because people are impatient and they want to see Maitreya, but he can't violate that law. He works within it perfectly. And until Maitreya teaches humanity this law and how to live within this law, it will be foreign and we won't understand, really, why he is working within that law in that way. But he can't volunteer information until it's asked, until he knows that it's not going to violate our free will. And that's why it took so long for him to get on TV. It took so much work from Benjamin Creme over decades and decades and decades and decades of getting this information out little by little by little by little, to the point where it wouldn't be an infringement on human free will for him to come on TV. And then the next stage was he was on TV, but he wouldn't say who he is, or he wouldn't look how we think he would look, or sound how we think he would sound. So we're in that phase right now. And the reason why it's taken so long is because humanity is really where it's at. And it doesn't take much. All you have to do is just look around and see the consciousness of humanity, right? Now, it will shift eventually. And then one of these representatives on our media will ask him a question that might trigger something for him to say. Or not trigger, but that's maybe the wrong word. But will signal to Maitreya that humanity is ready for more information, I guess is a better way of saying it. Does that make sense? So, but it's important to, I think, keep in mind that the reason why these videos that I'm putting up don't go viral, the reason why Benjamin Creme's videos aren't going viral is because there's not that much interest in it yet. I'm not saying that my videos are ever going to go viral, but Benjamin Creme's videos are definitely going to go viral. Once Maitreya comes out and he's more known for who he is, perhaps the stage that people are recognizing him more and more, thinking back to the times that they heard Benjamin Creme's videos or they heard him actually speak, they start talking about it with their members of their family and those kind of things. So it will eventually become viral in that way. Does that make sense? But the one thing that I always talked about with people, there's one incredible miracle. And I refer to it, and Benjamin Creme referred to it as the hand of Maitreya, but it's a image handprint that Maitreya put on a mirror in Barcelona, Spain. And you can look at a copy of this, just a screenshot of it, and you can ask Maitreya for help and those kind of things. And he says that that's the best way to ask him for help because it creates this mind-to-mind contact with him. Now, why am I bringing that up? Well, when I first started these videos, I was looking at the image of the hand of Maitreya, and I said to Maitreya, mentally, I thought this, people aren't going to want to hear what I have to say. And what came back to me, whether it was from Maitreya or my own subconscious, this has really helped me out, is it said, don't worry about that. Just speak the truth as you see it. This is the important thing. I'm not speaking the truth. I'm not claiming the truth. I'm only claiming to speak the truth and be honest in that way, but I'm claiming that much. I'm not lying to people, but I'm speaking the truth as I see it. And the other part of it was, don't argue with people. So, when it comes to getting this information out, you just have to speak the truth as you see it. And if it creates interest, it creates interest. Some of my videos have had tens of thousands of views. Other ones are just 15 or 20 people or 100 people. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it will eventually break. Not necessarily my videos, but the information and the interest in Maitreya and what he's having to say, the priorities of Maitreya. Benjamin Creme's master said it will be like a dam bursts. It will be that massive of interest in who and what Maitreya is and what he stands for and what he means for humanity. And then this information will come out in that way. And then anybody who knows this information, and he was talking to the Share International group, but it could be for anybody, even if you weren't a part of the Share International group. If you know this information, people will ask you questions because you will already have known this information longer than them. And then if you want to take my advice, just speak the truth as you see it and don't argue with them, right? But somebody else brought up a question, and this kind of ties into it. What if you, I'm trying to find where that question was. What did they say? What if I have, where is it? Oh, here it is. Is it? I'm sorry, I'm clamoring for this. Oh, yeah, somebody says, what if I found him? Well, if you found Maitreya on TV and you've recognized him, don't say anything. Now, this brings up this is the other point I want to talk about. Benjamin Creme made it very clear to not mention who he is when you recognize him on TV. Let people come to that information on their own. Now, I'm not naive in this regard. I'm naive in other things, but I'm not naive in this regard that it won't eventually come up, especially since I'm talking about this and I've been talking about Maitreya for years on this shit. Somebody's going to bring it up. Oh, I saw him on TV and he looked like this and this was the name he was going by. And I'll delete the comment quickly. And if I have to ban the person so they don't keep bringing it up, I'll do it. But there's a very, very important reason why not to do it. And it goes back to the whole thing about free will. People have to want to hear what he has to say. That's the reason, the only reason why Maitreya is not using his name is because it's better for each and every one of us to sit here and listen to who he is, what he has to say in simple honesty, as Maitreya put it. This is coming from Maitreya. He wants us just to hear what he has to say and go, I like that. Or I don't agree with that at all. And be able and free to be able to do that. So why, and then it circled back around to the whole Antichrist, conversation that I get a lot all the time, right? Understandably, but all the time. Why would an Antichrist figure want you to choose and have an honest choice about what he's saying? There is nothing that I've ever thought about the Antichrist. And if somebody was honest with themselves about who and what they think the Antichrist is, the Antichrist wouldn't do that. He would demand loyalty. Sounds like somebody that's already on the screen today, or in everybody's YouTube feeds today, right? Or on the TV or whatever. Demand loyalty, demand absolute loyalty and acceptance of what they have to say. But Maitreya doesn't do that. He's giving everybody a free choice. Do you think what you're saying is right and true, or do you disagree with it? Benjamin Creme's master said that when people listen to him, a large group of people are, yes, I want what he's saying. And others are saying, no, I don't like that at all. Right? And it's okay. Right? Now, those people who don't like what he has to say might eventually turn and say, yeah, I kind of get it now. But they didn't get it 10 years ago or something like that. That's why it's important that he doesn't say anything. So it's this information, Tim, is not important. And I'll kind of tie up what I have to say. This information is not, it is important, excuse me. Let me clarify. Okay, so I didn't mean to say and leave you hanging and saying this information is not important. But it's not important that this information go viral. Okay, it's just important to reach one person and then another person and then another person. Okay, does that make sense? Alice Bailey, the one of the masters that worked through her, the master Joao Kuhl, said he did not want this information to become popular, right? He was just writing it in the hopes that maybe just one person take it and use it, and it helps them to along the path, I think is how he put it, the path toward becoming a master, So hopefully that helps. Now, I appreciate it. And if somebody wants to come up with a viral, a video that they can put on TikTok that will go viral, by all means do it. It's just I'm not technical enough to do it. Does that make sense? But thank you very much for the comment, for sure. All right, now I had a email question, which let me have to switch to my email here real quick. Excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me. All right, here we go. There's a person named James who put up a comment, and I don't know if YouTube took it down, but one of the questions was, I think if I'm trying to remember, was something to the effect of, you didn't think that you had any experiences with Maitreya, and you're wondering why somebody like myself or Dick Larson had an experience with Maitreya. I personally can't answer that question. I don't know. Benjamin Creme didn't even have an answer to why did Maitreya appear before some people and not others. He did say that it had something to do with the purpose of the person in the future that Maitreya was privy to, because Maitreya can see the future as well as the past and the present all at the same time. So not everybody obviously has had an experience with Maitreya or one of these masters. What I'm trying to point out, James, and I do disagree that perhaps maybe you have, I guess is my disagreement, that maybe you have had one. Not saying you have, but I'm just saying more than likely, probably, But, I guess if you don't think you did, you didn't. It's not a big deal, right? I don't think, it makes someone special because they had an experience with Maitreya. It just means that perhaps the destiny of that person is different than yours, right? So, for instance, there might be somebody who's doing a tremendous amount of work in the world and has never had an experience with Maitreya. And it doesn't matter because they're working in a different field, you know what I mean? And they don't need to have an experience with Maitreya because they're already doing what they need to do, right? Myself, I think the reason why, if I had to guess why Maitreya has met with me over the years, and especially why what he said to me was so specific, and some of the instances were very dramatic, and I can point to it versus just a random homeless person smiling and waving at me like so many people experiences they've had with Maitreya have been, and they're a little bit more specific, is because Maitreya knew that I would be talking to people about this. And that I needed something for myself to kind of sit in and rely on and not just regurgitate what Benjamin Creme talked about, but have a real sense of it for myself that there's truth to it. This is just what I think, okay? Now, some of the things that he said to me were teachings that I needed to learn, right, for myself, such as, peace always comes from within is something that I've been working on. Or how did he put it? He goes, I don't judge people on whether they're good or bad. I only notice the good things that they do. So those are teachings for me that I've shared with others because it's not just for me, right? But those are things that he's taught me that I've learned that have helped me to become more loving, become more centered and more peaceful and those kind of things, right? The other thing he said to me in a very funny way, but I'm starting to see it in I've started to see it in myself, and I started to see it in other people, and how the pain that it causes them is how much I was fighting everything. And the way he said it was the way that I had said something to my wife just like a week earlier to this. So the story goes like this. I came across my first baby picture in my baby book. I just found it in my closet, and I was lying in bed with my wife, and I was going through my baby book, looking at the first, haircut I had and when that happened. And then there was this picture of me, and it's me in the hospital, and my hands are clenched, and they look like I'm a boxer. One is up toward my head, and the other one is down toward my chest. Like a boxer's getting ready to, spar with somebody in the ring. And I looked at my wife, and I jokingly said, it's like I've been fighting my whole life. That's exactly how I said it to her. And she said, what do you mean? And my wife is kind of a literal person. She doesn't get my humor all the time. But it's a cultural thing. But anyway, I said, look at me. I look like a boxer. And then she goes, oh, yeah, I can see that now. Well, a week or so later, Maitreya ran into me at my job, and I was going through a time where I was fighting everything, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. This is exhausting, right? So I had already come to the realization that I shouldn't do this. And one of the things that Maitreya said to me, when he put his hands in the exact same position that were in the picture of me as a little baby, like a boxer, and he kind of shadow boxed me a little bit, and he goes, dude, it's like you've been fighting your whole life, Gary. It really pulled me back into, I need to work on this. And now that I'm seeing this in myself, all the things that I'm fighting, and just, you expend so much energy fighting things, right? Now I'm seeing it in other people in my life and how it's affecting them. And they're exhausted all the time. And yet they're fighting everything all the time. And that's creating such an energy drain on them, right? And people always ask me, how do you have so much energy in the morning time or in the afternoon or whatever like this? It's really because I stopped fighting. You know what I'm saying? And it's not that I'm just letting bygones be bygones and everything, but to fight every little thing over and over and over, it's exhausting, man. So anyway, I kind of lost my train of thought. But the reason why he was so specific to me is because it's given me the confidence to talk about this with total strangers over the years, right? Maybe, I don't know. But I also put out there, James, that people who are probably coming to this information, whether it's this channel or Share International or whatever, they more than likely have had an experience with Maitreya and just don't remember it. And it's okay. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to try to remember it. It's just, but I do think also that when you see Maitreya on TV, perhaps on the day of declaration, after we recognized him as him, and then he said that's him, which is what's going to happen on the day of declaration. Everyone in the world is going to know at the same time that person is Maitreya. That millions upon millions of people who have forgotten about their experiences will remember him. And it will make sense to them, like, oh, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I said what I said. But, maybe you didn't. I don't know. It's not for me to say, Going back to the whole speak the truth as you see it and don't argue with people. So I'm not going to argue with you about it. All right, now, this was the other thing you had emailed me. You said, if Maitreya's here, he's got a lot of explaining to do. I was brought up Catholic, and I was told God created all of us and the whole world and was loving like a dad, all-knowing, all-powerful. In Maitreya's message, he speaks of God. I want to ask him why this God hides from us. Benjamin Creme, in the 4 books I've read, won't say anything about this. If God loved us, God should show himself to us and speak to us. We wouldn't need prophets like Ben or Maitreya or Moses then. Life would be 1,000 times better if God stopped hiding. Maitreya should explain this. Ben should have said something about this. Think about it. Would we consider a guy a loving father who left his family and never contacted his kids again? That's what God does every day to his children. Why? It isn't right. I feel abandoned by God, and I know I'm not the only one. Hell, Jesus said this on the cross. Okay, so what I would say, James, and this is when I said I'll try to answer this, and I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for. I guess it doesn't matter, but this is just the answer that comes to me, okay? It all boils down to one thing: how you see life. Maitreya himself said, as man so relates to man, does man relate to God. If you see yourself as abandoned, if you see yourself as separate, you see God as abandoning you and separate from you. When in reality, there is no abandonment and there is no separation from you and God. And this goes for everyone. Everyone goes through these experiences like you had. Like you said, you're not alone. Of course, you're not alone. But like everybody goes through this. Where is God? Why did this bad thing happen to me? Why did this da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? We don't know the inner workings of life well enough to be able to answer it truthfully like that. And I'm not putting it off. I'm not deflecting the question. But we really honestly don't know. We don't see the whole picture. We only see a little bit. But it all boils down to how you see life. If you see life separate, you see God as separate from you. If you see life as one, you see God as a part of you and you a part of him. And then there is no separation. There is no abandonment. If you are a critical person, like I used to be, your God is critical. You're Maitreya, and I'm not saying Maitreya is God, but if you look to Maitreya as one of God's representatives or these masters, well, then the masters are critical. And it's funny because I know a lot of Christians who are very critical of other people. Well, their Jesus is very critical of them too, by the way. You know what I'm saying? I know a lot of people from Share International are very critical. And they would say that the masters are very critical, especially those first-rate masters like the Master Moria, very critical. Ooh. When in fact, the Master Moria, in one of his teachings through Helena Roerich, talked about criticism and how bad it is, right? But they view him as being critical because they assume that because he's a first ray, which is the ray of will and power, he must be very critical. When in actuality, it's just them being critical. He's just as loving as the Master Jesus and the Master Kuthumi and the Master, Maitreya. He's just as loving as they are. But they assumed he would be critical, right? But it's how they relate to one another. And I use this as an example, if you don't believe me. If you go back to early animal man, we were all hunters and gatherers. That's what we did. That's how we saw life. That's how we saw God. That's how we related to God. That's what the prayers that we gave to God were all about: hunting, gathering, a good feast, a good hunt, plentiful food, those kind of things. I never once have prayed to God that they have the cereal that I want at the grocery store that I shop at. Never, not once have I ever done that, right? I've never prayed to God that my sports team wins. But yet people who are very into their sports teams literally pray to Jesus that he will help the University of Alabama beat Georgia, or vice versa. And if you think I'm crazy, just come to the South. You'll see. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying every one of them do it, but there are people who do it, right? So it's how you relate. Now, Maitreya said, and this is something that I think that something to consider, James, is he said that he comes to, how did he put it? He comes to rid the world of the crime of separation. He affirms that as his purpose. The crime of separation. All the ills of the world are caused by our view of thinking ourselves separate from one another. Everything. From crime to terrorism, war, the divisions politically, the divisions economically, the pain and suffering that we cause ourselves and others are all caused by, the root cause of it is the belief that we are separate. They all vanish. All those things vanish when we see ourselves as one. Everything. In fact, it goes to even our physical health is caused by the belief that we are separate. That's why these masters know no illness, is because they never once think of themselves as separate from one another, or life, or God, or whoever. They see everything as them and them within everything, moment to moment, without exception. That's why they live as long as they live, as healthy lives as they live, and never know any more illness. They've gone beyond that. Now, the good news is they're here to teach us how to do what they do. That's why they're here. That's their mission, is to teach us how to live life as they live life. One, seeing ourselves as one with the universe or God or whatever, the cosmos, however you want to put it, doesn't matter, right? And that within us. There's no separation between any of that. So if you think that God's abandoned you because you're a Catholic, it's because Catholicism is all based on God being separate from man and man separate from God. That's the pain and the suffering that it's caused. That's the disservice that the churches have caused over the centuries. That's the evil that they've been put out, right? Is that you're separate from God. Well, of course, if you're separate from God, you're not going to see God. God's up in the clouds somewhere, right? When in actuality, God is, and Jesus said this, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's as close to you as your own hand. You just have to see yourself as one with it. And then there is no abandonment. The master has never abandoned you. But the thing of it is, too, is that if you truly see yourself as one with the universe, here's the kicker. You don't need to be around Maitreya. You know what I'm saying? You are one with the universe. You don't have to, I mean, if someone truly saw themselves as one with the universe, right? You wouldn't long for an experience with a master or an experience with God, or you wouldn't long to have to see God. And I'll tell you what, if I can make any suggestion to you, James, listen to Krishnamurti, watch Krishnamurti videos. Now, knowing who and what he was, coming from Benjamin Creme, where he was actually being trained by Maitreya to be the world teacher for this age, and then having that job, that function taken away, and so to speak, because Maitreya saw that he wouldn't be able to do it, that he himself and the masters would have to come back into the everyday world. If you listen to him, right, I can guarantee you that didn't bother him. You know what I'm saying? It didn't bother him that all that happened. He never brings it up. You know what I'm saying? Because he's teaching the teachings of Maitreya perfectly. He's a perfect example. This is coming from Maitreya. He's a perfect example of Maitreya's own teachings. So if Maitreya is here to teach us to rid us of the crime of separation, that's his teachings. From honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, detachment, the principle of sharing, those are all to rid humanity of the crime of separation. If you watch Krishnamurti videos, there's a link in the description to a wonderful channel that has all these videos from decades ago of Krishnamurti talking to people or whatever, talking one-on-one interviews to speaking to crowds of people or whatever. You get a sense of what I'm talking about. He is nothing but honesty of mind, sincerity of spirit, and detachment. He does it perfectly. You know what I'm saying? So, when you see life like that, questions that you come up like you have don't come up anymore. Naturally, they don't come up anymore. You know, and I'll bring a biblical reference to this. I've talked about this before. So this is coming from Paul in the Bible. He says, "Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another hath fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness or lie, thou shalt not covet. And if there be any other commandment, it is briefly comprehended in this, saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law." That's written right in the Bible for those Christians who are listening to this too. Love thy neighbor as thyself is the epitome of you. That's the best way to explain unity. You see others as you. When you see others as you, there is no jealousy. There is nothing to covet. Paul talked about it right there. You know what I mean? It's the fulfillment of the law. There is no reason to believe anything if you love one another as yourself. There is no reason to memorize the commandments. If you love your neighbor as yourself, if you see them as yourself, you're never going to harm them. Ever. You can't. You know what I'm saying? You'll only want the best for them. You'll only love them in that way. If they succeed where you couldn't succeed, you wouldn't envy them in that way because you're seeing them as an extension of you. Does that make sense? So we all compare and contrast because we all see ourselves as separate and different from one another, when in actuality we're all the same. We're all one. We're perhaps diverse, we're all unique, but we're all in that way we're different. But in essence, we're all the same. We're all a part of the same divinity. We all share the same divinity. There is nothing other than that. So I could address your question differently, perhaps, but at the end of the day, it all boils down to how do you perceive life, James? Do you perceive yourself as separate? Which brings up all manners of ills, right? which you're not the only one that's guilty of this. Every single humanity is guilty of this. Even the masters were guilty of this. They committed the sin of separation, just as we are committing the sin of separation. It's a crime, right? The illusion that comes from the belief that we're all separate. We're all guilty of it. But the good news is that Maitreya is already speaking to humanity, setting the ground for him eventually being able to teach humanity just how one we really are. And just how we have not been living like that, politically, economically, with social structures, artistically, how we're not living life like that. But once we do, how incredible it will bring life on planet Earth. So hopefully that helps. But anyway, but thank you very much for the questions and the comments, everybody. I love you guys. You guys take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I look forward to putting up videos in the very near future. And keep your questions coming. Hopefully, like I said, James, hopefully that answers your question. Anyway, you guys take care. Enjoy the day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.